Item number 17, rates remissions. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this current recommendation? Moved Paul, seconded Glenn. And right. Yanni, do you want to say anything first, Peter?
If you'd like me to go over the executive summary.
No, we're okay with
that's
reading.
What I thought.
Yeah.
After my annual report.
Okay, sorry. So is there a mover for this? Yeah, Raf, do you want to move it? Yeah, Raf moves. Okay, and Paul, you want to speak to it?
Just that post-earthquake, now we're talking 4 years since the earthquake, and we had rates relief, I think, to about 40-50% for actually some of the people on the Port Hills, and those people have now been out of their houses for now 4 years, but some of them paying mortgages, now also paying rent, and we know the rent market and what it's doing to our people in Christchurch. The amount of people receiving the rates rebate has actually reduced significantly and is actually on an ever decreasing decline in that area. However, there are a few cases, and just what I spoke about, that are actually really suffering quite badly through this here, and it would be good to have some discretion around who can and can't receive this. We saw with the flood that they all received a full remission for their inability to be able to occupy their houses, and it seems to me that this seems a little unfair that we've got people that are still left in this position 4 years on. I don't expect a massive take-up on this here, but it would be good to be able to give the staff some ability to look at it on a case-by-case basis rather than coming back to the full council for a full discussion. I think we're trying to, as a council, be a can-do council, one that actually allows our staff some discretion in making some decisions, and I think that sort of sometimes can relieve some of the bureaucracy that we find certain things in certain instances end up in, where people come against a brick wall of bureaucracy. So,
can I suggest that there's clear thing here that staff really didn't want this delegation, which is what I read out in the report. If you want some degree of flexibility, can I suggest that you suggest a mechanism where it comes, for example, to the monthly finance committee or strategy and finance or whatever it is, so that you're not putting the onus on staff, but that you're putting it on the people who deserve the problem?
Look, either way, I'd like to see something mechanism put in place where we actually...
So you need to move an amendment then, Paul, if you want to do something like that. But I suggest from what the staff are saying that they don't particularly want it resting with staff.
Okay. Well, then I'd move an amendment to something to the degree where actually on a case-by-case basis, people who have requested some assistance in a full rebate on their rates have a mechanism to be able to actually bring it to either a committee or somewhere.
Can I?
Why are you taking a few more questions? It's just about the delegation.
Yes. So at the moment we can do it now in the Finance Strategy and Finance Committee. Is that where they currently go if there is such a request? Right. Okay. This is just delegating to staff. I would suggest that the sort of thing that you're looking at is on a case-by-case basis, any possible remissions be dealt with by Strategy and Finance with delegated authority or something like that, if you want to think about that for a moment. Yanni, were you next? Sorry? No? Glenn? Oh, you were?
So just procedurally, I think I seconded it a bit too soon. My
Right,
thoughts
okay.
are actually fairly lined up with Paul's. So
Okay,
anyway,
it's
it
all
gets
right.
it on the table, so
I'll put Councillor Goff as the seconder, will
probably
I?
go with the amendment.
Yep. Okay. Right. That's all we wanted. Yanni?
So we currently have a policy where reports can come to council, but to the best of my knowledge, no reports ever come to council for consideration. So, I proposed doing a notice of motion which has generated this report, and I know Paul has talked to the Mayor and staff around trying to get a report into this.
Right.
So if staff are reluctant to have that discretion, I agree we need to set up a mechanism to actually do this in a much more efficient way than current, because people are really stressed out and it is quite, there are special circumstances. So I guess it's a question of staff. If you feel uncomfortable having the discretion,
Where should it go?
why haven't these cases come in reports to council, and what do we need to do to ensure that we can get a good decision-making process around these cases?
That's probably directed at you, Peter.
Yes, if I could refer you to footnote 2 at the bottom of page 172. So where there are policy issues that need to be addressed, they can be turned around in a reasonably, and we'd always like them to be faster, prompt manner. So the response to the March 2014 flood events was relatively fast, and that created a new remission policy category, which then staff can apply unambiguously and easily. So it doesn't have the impacts of potential staff cost and time, ambiguity, lobbying. So it made it really clear. So where there are policy issues such as that, they can be brought up quite quickly. And you'll see from the table at the top of that page that the number of rating units ranges from 1 through to 1,800. So there is that ability on a policy basis to actually be quite targeted as well. So it's not that staff don't want to apply a policy, it's that they don't want to, shouldn't have the policy diameter as part of their makeup. We should be applying policies rather than creating them.
Okay.
I've passed on a number of these cases, and people have received letters and penalty payments and are quite stressed out. In terms of thinking about what criteria could be applied to those cases, is that something you can come back to us with in sort of short order so that we can think about what we might do? I mean, the classic one for me is the two classic ones are the fences that go up around someone's property, and then no one knows who put the fences up, and there's kind of like, but we're told that they can have access to their property, but no one knows whose fences they are. But it would appear to be, some public body, or the ones in the landmass movement who can't get building consents because they're in a class 1 intolerable area, and are really stuck and are being charged full rates, which seems inherently unfair.
So is another one of the issues, Yanni, the fact that this has to come at a public meeting?
Well, I mean, I don't.
It's not a problem. Okay.
I'm not sure, but
Okay.
if
Well,
we've
the
got
current
a process-
situation, Yanni, if you've
Go
got
to
them, is that they come to the council for discussion.
But who
If-
drives that report? Because it's not coming from staff.
Well, I'm
So
assuming if
do we
you've
do it
got
ourselves?
no, I'm assuming if you've got cases where people are in hardship, that you take it to somebody in finance or rates, and they get a report.
Well, that hasn't.
Is that an okay system?
That is an okay system, absolutely. Right. We'd apply the current policy to those situations, and where that current policy was not applicable and remission, then if there was a category, then we could talk
Bring
about
it
a
to
particular
which committee?
What committee would we take it? Strategy and planning?
Probably finance.
Yeah, the strategy and finance.
Right, strategy and
and
finance.
finance.
Right, okay. So if you've got those two or others that you're talking about, give them to Peter and he'll make sure somebody looks at them and gets a report if there is something that can be done. Or if there's something that we need to consider as a possibility to be done. Well, you've got a mechanism now. Yeah.
So we raise on urgently clear, we raise the concern of staff, we generate a report to the committee on fair and equitable and bring it back to the committee.
Yes. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. If the issue is raised with a particular constituent, that are they valid for a remission, then we'll look at that and say under the terms of the policy, yes, they are right. If that then is a no, but there are certain characteristics which are deemed to start to create a category, then we would bring back a category type of question. We wouldn't be applying a fair and equitable, ambiguous type of policy.
Okay. Right, can I go down this side now? I've got Ali, Glenn, David. Is that right? And Phil.
And again, can you please tell me if this is something that needs to be discussed elsewhere, because it does relate actually to the policy, but it's the interpretation of it. Can I ask questions around that?
We'll ask the question and we'll tell you then.
Okay, no, happy with that. Right, so page 170, there are 3 broad types: routine, earthquake, fair and equitable. When we look at the earthquake remissions, it's got specific to earthquake damage. My question is, where the earthquake damage then results in repair that requires the person to be out of the home, in one case I've been dealing with recently was 10 months, Can that come under earthquake damage because it is directly, the repair is related to that damage? It's an interpretation thing around the earthquake damage.
Generally not, no. The way we've been applying it is that we've been giving it to people who are out of their houses and the houses are not yet being repaired. For the period that they've got to go out of their houses during repair, it's assumed that they've got insurance to cover that. Now, it's probably worth clarifying that. There's two situations I can think of. One is where the place has been uninhabitable and they have been out for a while. At the point that repairs start, we won't suddenly slap the rates back on.
Yeah, those aren't the cases I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of people who are out of their houses. For the example I just explained, 10 months for repair.
So can I assume that if there is a new category that is not currently covered, then the possibility would be that a possible new category was considered by strategy and finance of those who are out of their home for earthquake repair but not covered.
Take it there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Just late payment penalties, same page, up to 100% remission in cases of genuine one-off error. That relates to error by staff and or resident?
Yes, I guess. I mean, typically the intention is for resident or especially automatic payments that...
I understood but I just wanted to clarify that. And last one, page 171, 3.6.2, two such specific council resolutions, etc., etc. Underneath the second dot, the clear dot, the see-through dot, cannot progress with repair until after council has completed drainage. One of the problems that we're hearing about, particularly, I think, well, it's across the city, but in St Albans too, and cannot progress with repair because of insurance and EQC delays. So at the moment, where there are delays relating to EQC and insurance, which is very, very common, people aren't able to get on, but it doesn't fit the criteria. Oh, again, is that something I should take strategy and planning if it's a change of policy?
It might be worth talking offline because there's a lot of overlap there with people in similar situations with earthquake damage, and there'll be literally thousands of people having earthquake or EQC and insurance delays, and I'm not sure that's the sort of area we want to get into.
But cannot progress until after council has completed drainage and remediation. If people cannot progress with repair because of insurance and EQC delays, the principle is basically exactly the same, isn't it?
Yeah, unoccupied, it would still be called a vehicle. Unoccupied would be up underneath.
Can Nicola come up? Because I think she would.
Good question.
Can Nicola come up? Because I think she's been dealing with some of these. Is that possible?
It is relating to the flooding, yeah.
Is Nicola there? No, she doesn't look like she's
Okay.
keen.
No, because that's
Okay.
related to earthquake, not flooding.
But I think it was an earthquake question.
We'll talk offline about that if we can, because
Okay.
it's an interesting point. I think the principle behind this when we wrote it was that what we're trying to do is give people some kind of compensation, admittedly relatively limited, but recognise where they can't get on with their lives because of something that we're doing, rather than something that insurers or EQC or their neighbours or anyone else is or is not doing.
Okay.
Because there'll be a number of people in difficult situations because of their neighbours or because of their insurance companies or whatever else, and there'll be an awful lot of that will have quite a different financial implication to where we're saying, look, you can't get on, it's our fault.
Cool.
We're recognising that until we
Let's
get on.
have a chat about it offline
Yeah,
then. So we
let's
thank
do that.
you. Thank
Glenn.
you.
Debate? Is this debate now?
Let me just check. David, is yours a question or a debate? Nothing. Phil, is yours a question or a debate? Discussion. Okay.
Go for it.
No further questions? One last question.
I just wanted to understand our existing policy. We have wording in there that allows council to make a decision around, I think it's fair and equitable. Is that right? So
Yes.
there's a current policy that says council can by resolution make rates remissions that are fair and equitable or something on hardship. So what I'm still struggling to understand is if we're doing that, but we can't get reports generated to do that, then what do we need to do differently so that we can actually get reports to do that? So that's our current rates remission policy.
Yeah, no, we've got the question.
Yeah.
Just waiting for the answer.
There's no breakage in the link that I can see for there not to be a mechanism for a report. So if you're not getting reports currently, just ask me.
There you go. couldn't get a better answer.
And so can I then move an amendment?
Yes, you may, yeah.
Because clearly, there's a desire to do
Just
something.
move the amendment and we'll see if we can get a seconder.
Yeah, so can I move that?
So this is an amendment moved by Councillor Johansson.
That council delegate to the Strategy and Finance Committee to consider this report and any other.
But it doesn't need to consider this report, does it?
Well, how are we going
Aren't you just now,
criteria?
like, if you've got queries, you take them to the appropriate person, and if there is a basis for a report to go to council through Strategy and Finance, they do it. If you're feeling like nothing's happening, you've got Peter's phone number.
I don't want to wait another 3 months
No.
to get a report to go.
That's
to be
why I
decided
don't think
on.
you need what you're moving, Yanni. You've now got a situation where you're clear that if people are not being treated fairly and equitably, you get the report from staff, it goes to Strategy and Finance, and the policy changes.
But I thought we heard before that staff wanted criteria. They didn't want to just write reports without having any criteria. That's why we haven't been getting reports today.
The report would need to be, from my perspective, a suggestion around a new category that fitted within a fair and equitable portion, so that councillors could then resolve to create that category. And as I said earlier, those targets and those resolutions can work from anywhere from 1 to 1,800.
Yes. So any one person who feels like they're in a situation that, as Steve said, was more of our making than theirs,
Yeah.
or more of our making than an insurance company's, could actually come and approach via you or anyone to have a new category listed of rates remissions. Have I misunderstood that?
No, that's correct, and that would enable us, by going back to the committee, to do full and frank discussions around what that might cost and the implications.
That's why I'm thinking, Yanni, that your amendment actually slows down the process you're trying to achieve.
Well, no, I definitely don't want to. I want to speed it up.
Yes, I know.
I'm just mindful that there's people that have been getting
Yeah, no,
late
I know.
penalty letters and told that things are going off their mortgage, who are pretty stressed out.
Yeah, no,
So,
we understand that.
You know.
So you're about to have a discussion with somebody in the rates department, and if you're not satisfied with Peter, and then if there is a possible fair and reasonable category that can be gleaned, then that will come to Strategy and Finance already, without this report going there for consideration.
and then strategy, and the point I'm making is Strategy and Finance then has to report to council, so that could take 2-3 months. Could we just delegate Strategy and Finance to
You
make
could,
that decision?
if you want to do that. So you could suggest that the process of fair and equitable policy decisions be delegated to the Strategy and Finance Committee, if that's what you want to.
That's what I was.
Okay, I'm just trying to get your amendment to achieve what you want it to. So that's moved Councillor Johansson. Is it seconded? Seconded, Paul? So, put it in the amendment, yeah. Approved by, delegated to the Strategy and Finance Committee. Is that right, Yanni? Yeah. Delegated to. Okay? Is that what you want?
I was just
No,
talking-
is that what you want? Yes, no, binary.
No,
If it's
I
not,
think
change
from
it.
talking to councillors, I think they're keen for it just to come straight to the full council.
Okay.
Rather than 2 weeks. Add a new delegation, so.
Right. Okay, so do you want to remove the amendment?
Yeah.
Okay, right, the amendment's gone away. Right, okay, we're now on to discussion, and I've got, was it you, Glenn? Must be, yeah.
No, just, look, I kind of wish you all were here in the last term when we were dealing with a lot of our... You don't. When,
Only on the basis that we wouldn't be now.
that's all right. When we were dealing with a whole lot of red zoners, because this has been a source of ongoing frustration for me and Yanni and the councillors representing the eastern wards. I guess I can see both sides of this. I mean, I certainly, obviously our side, but the staff's as well. So when I've approached staff over individual various cases, they've said, well, look, it doesn't fit the policy. I can see that. I can see that invidious position it puts them in. So I can kind of accept that. But we've come in with this can-do approach. So can we actually find a tool that works all round. For instance, I think about that kind of living condition I tried to promote in the last term about habitability. So you talk about a dwelling that can be occupied. That's not the same thing as saying it's habitable. It's kind of in that arbitrary realm where it gets tricky and where the policy doesn't quite work. So if we can find ways, something like this, to take it on a case-by-case basis, I know some of our constituents would really appreciate that. So, really support this. As I said, procedurally, I fired too soon because I've got my name up seconding the original motion.
Okay, that was the one I needed to change.
It's actually a variation to it.
Sorry, Chris, that was the one I meant to change. That one's Councillor Goff. Okay, right, thank you. Dave, did you want to speak? No? Phil?
Look, I certainly understand where Yoni's coming from in terms of it being extremely difficult for people almost to survive. But I think we need to keep in mind what's sort of council responsibility and what is other organisations' responsibility, including insurance. And I'm actually also concerned, though, if we adopt a case-by-case sort of policy, that in fact we could end up dealing with a huge number of cases. And I think we need to be really clear about establishing further criteria if necessary, if we can, from those cases we're getting, so that we consider those. I think the whole point about compensation, about being due to what council sort of has done, is really important. Equally, any additions, we have to be clear, because we as a council also need to continue to be accountable and also open in our processes. So basically, while I understand the concern for many individuals, I'm reluctant that we as a council deal with them on a case-by-case basis. We have to establish the policy, and if there's new criteria we can add to, I'm certainly open to looking at that.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, look, just to respond to that, we didn't cause the floods. They were caused by natural occurrences, and we gave a full rates remission. The earthquake is a natural occurrence, albeit one that was, had a greater impact than the floods. So we have some responsibility around that, and that's my concern, is that we've got to be fair and even across the board. Full rates remission for floods, but not for some people that are stuck in these situations on the hill or in other areas where they're not getting that full remission. So it's really about us having that right balance and being seen to be fair and equitable across the board. That's really my statement.
Fine. Thank you. Yanni?
Yeah, look, I think it's really important. If you look at part of our current policy, it is actually dealing with, if you look at inaccessible commercial property, property cannot be accessed for assessment or repair due to a dangerously earthquake damaged adjacent building. So that's not caused by us, but what we recognise is that there are exceptional circumstances beyond anyone's control who are people who are having to pay rates. If you look at the landmass movement, someone that went from green zone to class 1 intolerable and has to wait for the remediation work to be done by council, I just think we have to get a way of dealing with these issues and a much more can-do attitude around what is reasonably fair. And I think, we're not talking about thousands and thousands of cases. We're actually talking about a few cases of extraordinary circumstance just to have some discretion so that we don't end up going through a whole confrontational approach, but actually work with local people over some of these really important issues. So the fact that people can't use their land and have to continue to pay rates, I just cannot understand why we would be charging them rates, and they're told by the Port Hills Geotech people to contact the rates department, then we get contacted as councillors because the rates department can't do anything, and that's why we're in the situation today. We need to get a much smarter way of dealing with these hard cases in a more efficient way so that we can actually make some of these decisions and I think provide some of that discretion. And that's why I really wanted staff to be able to have that discretion so that they can actually talk to these individuals, come up with a compromise solution that addresses the concern. But I understand if staff feel uncomfortable doing that, so we have to do it as councillors, and I take on board that the staff have said that they will prepare reports to go to the committee, and so I'll be taking that opportunity up, and we'll see what happens as a result. But I just think it's incredibly important that we do this. The problem with having criteria is that by the time you write the criteria, there's always new criteria that should have been in the criteria and a whole bunch of reasons why people don't qualify. So you just get this continuous cycle of work trying to redefine the criteria to fit the case if you don't have discretion. And so that's why I thought it was a much more simple is to have a wider discretion. But I appreciate if people feel uncomfortable doing that, we'll try the current policy and see if we can get action on that. If we can't, we may need to come back.
Okay, can I put them, it's just a motion now. Can I put that? Those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, carried. Okay, item 18, the report of the chairperson of the Burwood Pegasus